As we run out of oil, water and soil and face a battery of new insect pests, our ability to feed another 3 billion people by 2050 is very much in question. BBC World News scours the globe for answers in the final part of Food for Thought.
The expected increase in world population, more food needs to be produced over the next 50 years than we've produced throughout human history. Yet from the science community, there are dire warnings that we're running out of land and water. Farmers are beset with new challenges, such as changing climate, rising costs of chemicals, new pests and diseases, fast encroaching urban areas, and degrading soils. And it's in the developing world, with more than 90% of the population rise, where it's crunch time. Can world agriculture continue to meet the challenge of providing global food security? Welcome to the second part of Food for Thought. In this programme, we concentrate on the impact of science and trade. We see how plants' genetic information can boost yields without the manipulation of its DNA, and how growing crops for biofuel can also feed the family. We see how managing trade and reaching new markets can boost livelihoods and improve the status of women farmers. Again, we report on surprising innovation and enterprise. But will this enable the doubling of output scientists claim we need by 2050?
It is time now that we really need to look into not just the production gain, but also the gain in terms of the environmental protection, human health, the nutrition, trying to address the gender issues. We need a second green revolution.
It's about access to resources, access to land, and just through increasing of yield, you cannot tackle the food security challenges if you don't tackle also the social problem.
The big challenge is we've got to grow more food for a growing world population and do it sustainably, not least because of our changing climate. So we've got a very big task on our hands.
A visitor from outer space would be in no doubt that this is a rice-growing planet. It's the staple crop for half the world, and the world's biggest importer is the Philippines. Fittingly, the country is home to IRRI, the International Rice Research Institute, recognised worldwide as a centre for excellence in the application of science and seed conservation. Many of the high-yield crops in use today were developed at research centres like IRRI. They were so successful when getting bumper crops year in, year out was the main objective that today's farmers are dependent on just a few of their best varieties.
It was seen as a bit of a paradox that the more successful we were in producing better varieties, the more we lost the old varieties.
As farmers specialised in a few high-yield crops, so the lack of diversity laid their crops open to devastating attacks of pests and disease.
If you're growing one variety, that means billions and billions and billions of identical clones. Now, suppose a new disease comes out that's able to attack one of those, by definition is able to attack all the others, it can spread like wildfire.
This vulnerability led research centres to begin seed banks. They were in the nick of time. According to the Food and Agriculture Organisation, in the 1970s there were 3,500 rice varieties grown in the Philippines. Today, only 10 varieties are commonly grown. The International Rice Gene Bank holds over 100,000 samples of rice from around the world, duplicated into two main sections, one containing seeds for use now, the other is an insurance policy.
The important thing here is to keep the seed safe and alive for as long as possible. So we have two cans like this. These are solid cans, vacuum packed, -19. This is really ideal conditions for long-term survival. And we don't touch these. This is just for our great-grandchildren. When they're grown up and the world is different, they may need to use these, even if we don't need them now.
Science has delivered in the recent past. What can it deliver now? In 2005, rice was the first crop plant to have its entire genome fully mapped. Using DNA analysis of the seeds stored in the International Rice Gene Bank, scientists can now look for rice varieties that possess genes responsible for specific traits, such as drought or salinity tolerance. The plants can then be crossbred in the conventional way with high-yielding varieties to produce new plants to suit specific environments. It's a process known as marker-assisted selection and does not require the direct manipulation of DNA.
We shortcut, basically. You know, we save time, many generations of time. So I think whenever possible, it's smarter and more straightforward to do it the way we do it now. We have conventional breeding, combine it with modern tools that allow us to speed up the breeding process.
For 50 years, scientists have been trying to breed a strain of rice that could survive underwater for short periods, but without success. Farmers in Southeast Asia lose an estimated $1 billion a year from rice crops destroyed by flooding. This is Shibpur village during the rice planting season. Here, the same village during the floods. Every year, a fifth of the country disappears beneath monsoon rainwaters. Using marker-assisted selection, rice breeders are currently field testing a flood-resistant rice, Swarna Submergence 1.
Normally, if rice is flooded for anything beyond a couple of days, the rice will just die in the ground. What this submergence gene does is allows the rice to survive for 2 to 3 weeks. When the flood subsides, the rice regrows, the farmer gets a crop, his community has food, farmer gets an income.
If climate change increases the severity and frequency of floods and droughts around the world, as experts predict, flooding in countries such as Bangladesh will only get more severe.
If we fail to manage climate change, it would totally disrupt agriculture, and thus it would severely damage food production around the world, all the way from a disruption of the Indian monsoon through to the productivity of big parts of Africa, where we would likely see collapses of 40, 50, 60% or more in yields.
In Africa, it's not flooding that's the main problem for rice growers, but water scarcity. In Benin, the new DNA technology, together with conventional breeding, has helped produce Nerica. Nerica rice combines a drought-resistant African rice with a high-yield Asian variety. Brigitte Adassin, once struggling on less than $2 a day, is a convert to this new hybrid rice.
I'm happy, and if I had a drum, I would dance.
For decades, poor rice farmers couldn't compete with cheap imported varieties. But then the price of imported rice skyrocketed, and the government declared a food emergency. It called on development partners like the UN's International Fund for Agricultural Development to help boost local rice production quickly. A decision that would give Brigitte and hundreds of poor farmers the break they were hoping for.
The global food crisis isn't necessarily a death sentence. It could actually be a great economic opportunity.
Farmers were encouraged to grow Nerica rice, and sure enough, found it matures fast, is more pest-resistant, and doesn't require as much water. For Brigitte, what mattered most was the yield. With just 1 hectare of Nerica, Brigitte increased her harvest from 1.5 to 6.5 tons of rice a year.
Before, I earned just a little money farming, but now with Nerica, I earn a lot more, and I'm investing in my future.
The World Health Organization estimates that up to 500,000 children go blind each year due to vitamin A deficiency. Half die within 12 months of losing their sight. Rice is the staple diet of the majority of those children. DNA technology is able to do more than help accelerate conventional plant breeding. Crop research organisations like IRRI can create transgenic rice varieties, genetically modified organisms, where the DNA molecules of one species are combined with another. Gerard Barry once worked in the commercial sector, but he gave that up to work on developing rice varieties for the benefit of the poor. He's helping develop a transgenic rice, a GMO, that contains vitamin A.
I'm standing here in front of probably one of my favourite views on Earth today. This is the advanced breeding project for golden rice for Bangladesh. So when farmers grow this variety in Bangladesh, they will produce a rice that supplies beta-carotene into the diet of rice consumers for the first time.
Scientists have taken DNA from maize and a soil bacterium and introduced them to rice to have the grain produce a source of vitamin A. The result is a rice that in an average portion could provide a substantial quantity of the daily requirements of vitamin A. Not only that, the rice will also be more resistant to flooding. And not everyone agrees the expense of developing transgenic crops is the best solution to problems of health and hunger.
I think that we have to do a rethink in terms of transgenic crops. What they do really do, what do they really bring to society? Right now, what we need is to implement known knowledge with which we can already improve agriculture in a very sustainable manner. That will be the better way of using funding.
In part 2, can biofuel be both food and fuel? And is better access to markets what the women mountain farmers of Nepal need more than any miracle crop?